Welcome to a Community Partners interview, where we explore the organizations, opportunities, and resources that look to make change in our daily lives. I'm your host, Nafisah Anif, and you're listening to Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities, all the time. Today I'm joined by Amy Romeo, the facilitator for the Niagara Pain Group. The Niagara Chronic Pain Support Group is a free self-help support group for people experiencing chronic non-malignant pain, which is pain that persists for longer than 3 months. Learn about resources, common issues, and coping strategies. Meet other people who understand the challenges of living with pain and disability while navigating the medical system. Spouses, partners, families, friends, caregivers, and support persons are all welcome because chronic pain affects everyone, not just the person suffering from it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Tell us a little more about you and what inspired you to work at the Niagara Pain Group and why work with individuals with disabilities.
Because I am one. This isn't actually, to clarify first, this isn't a paid position. This is a volunteer position. Our group is completely volunteer run, and we get all of our resources donated so that it can be a free resource to people who need it. It's very important to me that we keep it free and available to everyone who needs it. So I came to this as a chronic pain patient myself, looking for support at a very difficult part of my chronic pain journey. And through being there, not only did I find, peer support and friendships, quite frankly, because when you're in the throes of the worst part of chronic pain, it's very isolating. And a lot of the social connections that you once had can dry up just because you're not well enough to be out like you used to be. So I found a real connection with at least some of the people there. And over time, after being there for several years, the person who was running it at the time decided to move on, and eventually I became the facilitator. And now I'm the one doing the organizing and the teaching, and it's kind of cool that way. A lot of the long-term members have stepped up and been supportive. So even though I'm sort of the point person, I don't do it alone, really. I get a lot of support from other members.
That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. And can you tell us a little more about the Niagara Pain Group and how it got started?
Well, I wasn't there when it started. As far as I can tell, it goes back a few decades at least.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been around for I've been doing this for over a decade myself, and it was
That's
running
wonderful.
long before I got there. So the story, as I understood it, is that it started with some people who wanted to start a group, and they found a place. Somebody had a connection. I believe it started in a community room in a hospital at one point. Somebody was connected to the hospital somehow, whether they were a nurse or what, I don't know. When I joined, it was a meeting room inside of a church. And then when I sort of took over things on my own, because there was a brief few years there where I was a co-facilitator. And then when I was the only facilitator, the church, some of the things had changed, rules had changed with the church. They also run a daycare. So in order to keep that daycare, they had to not allow outside groups to use facilities while the daycare was running, just for safety reasons, which is understandable. And so now we found a home at the Penn Financial Credit Union. They have a community room there for groups like us to use for free, which is amazing. It's a very nice room too. So it's sort of that progression of from where it started to where we are now. And like I said, I wasn't there. And my understanding is it used to be people paid a fee to cover the cost of a room rental. And I try really hard to maintain everything being donated, everything being free, so that we don't have to charge anybody. One thing I've noticed in my time working with chronic pain patients, including myself, is that when you're so debilitated from chronic pain, it's really hard to work. And a lot of us don't have access to a lot of financial resources. And so it's hard to be able to pay for the help that you need. So it's very, very important to me. It's one of my biggest things. It's very important to me to keep this free and accessible for everybody.
Perfect. And I saw on your website while doing some research that you hold meetings. Can you tell us about some of those meetings and how someone can join meetings?
Yeah, we meet the first Tuesday of every month. Usually. The only exception to that might be if our first Tuesday of the month lands on a holiday, as it did this month. I think it was the beginning of this month. That was the case. And so the group made a decision together before that, several months before that, we voted to move it. But usually as a hard and fast rule, it's the first Tuesday of every month from 10:30 in the morning until noon, 12 o'clock noon. And it's held in St. Catharines, as I said before, the Penn Financial Credit Union has a room there. So it's a hybrid meeting. We meet in person. Traditionally, we're always only in person. And if you had asked me, I don't know, 5, 8 years ago, I would have said I would never have a virtual meeting for a support group. I would have told you it would be inappropriate to have an online component for a support group. And then the pandemic happened, and here we are as a hybrid meeting, and it's not bad. It's actually working out quite well. And it's making it much more accessible for so many more people. So even though we are the Niagara Chronic Pain Support Group and we used to only restrict membership to Niagara residents, now that we have a Zoom component, I'm a little less strict about that. I've had people from other places within Canada. We've got one member out the West Coast and another one out the East Coast. So we've reached pretty far, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't upset anything because of the Zoom link. It makes it pretty easy for people far and wide. And I recognize that there is a severe lack of resources for people with chronic pain. So I'm quite okay to have people from outside of Niagara join us if they really feel it's something that they need. I do absolutely welcome them. Meetings they're kind of structured a little bit with room in the agenda for less structured time if needed. So we always start our meetings with mindfulness, a very short mindfulness exercise, just to sort of ground ourselves, bring ourselves into the meeting, into the room. And then we move on to a brief check-in, what we refer to as a temperature check. So we go around to everyone. Everyone gets a chance to speak. And if you're not comfortable, you do have the right to pass. I never force anyone. But we ask everyone to just choose one word that describes how they're feeling in that moment as we start the meeting. So it's just a quick one. And then at the end of the meeting, we do the same. We go around, do another temperature check, and one word again for how you're feeling. And sometimes it can help you to gauge for yourself. It's not something I track, but for yourself, it can help to gauge like, oh, I started out feeling really anxious. And then at the end of the meeting, you might notice that you're feeling less anxious because of the meeting, because of the peer support, because of the interaction, because of something you learned. Could be anything, but I find it helps to have that temperature check to help yourself gauge how you're doing with that meeting and the impact it might be having. You'd be surprised how many people have said to me over the years, I didn't feel like coming today, and I dragged myself out of the house, and I'm really glad that I did. So far, I've never had anyone say to me that they regretted it. It's a powerful thing when you get people together for peer support. It can be a very powerful, supportive, life-changing thing.
It really can. And actually, you answered another question that I was going to ask. So thank you regarding whether the meetings were in person, virtual, or hybrid. So I'm happy that they're virtual. I mean, I do completely appreciate in-person support groups and just the connections that they offer. But having the virtual option for someone who is possibly not able to travel, who is comfortable with that kind of technology, it really can be something to uplift their lives in general.
Absolutely. And I'd just like to also note that it's not unusual for me to have at least one person zooming in from their bed. There are some people that are just really not that well. And rather than miss the meeting, they call in on a phone, a cell phone, or a tablet from their bed. And I'm completely okay with that. Just glad they made the effort.
For sure, for sure. Help me understand Niagara Pain Group. What resources and services are available to individuals with the Niagara Pain Group, and What does the Niagara Pain Group do to help or assist?
Well, so far what I've explained is about the extent of it. Unfortunately, I wish I could do more, but since this is all volunteer based, there's sort of a limit as to what we can do. My life has become very busy now. I used to put a lot more time into things and, have little projects. We used to have outings every month. That's kind of gone by the wayside with the pandemic and all the closures. I had a child just before the pandemic started, and being a single mom with a disability while juggling this has been a bit of a challenge. So I've had to kind of dial back those extra projects. But that's if there's a special request from someone, if there's something specific, I'm always happy to help and to listen and do what I can. But there are limits because this is a volunteer thing and we don't have a lot of financial resources available to us. It's really no financial resources. This is completely in-kind resources. So the Zoom link is donated to us once a month for our meeting. It's a paid Zoom link, so we don't have to worry about the time being cut off. And that's donated to us by the Michael G. DeGroot Pain Center up at McMaster. We have a connection with a doctor there. And then the room, as I said, is donated to us from the Penn Financial Credit Union here in St. Catharines. So I wish we could do more. I really do, but this is what we've got for now. The peer support has been surprisingly above and beyond. When there's a specific need identified by someone, it's not uncommon for another member to pipe up and say, "Oh, I can help with that." So there's a lot of peer support. It's right there in the name. It's peer support, really, that happens above and beyond what just the group is meant to offer. But I do have a dream that someday it's going to morph into more. I would love to be able to offer more services and more resources at some point. One of the things I do offer, though, is I have lists of resources that I hand out to our members, and I'm always updating those. And there's becoming a lot more resources online available to people with chronic pain.
Yeah, the pandemic unfortunately put a damper on a lot of stuff, and I found that many volunteer organizations are still struggling to recover and become what they used to be in terms of offering the kinds of services and opportunities they used to. So it really just decreased everything overall, which is really unfortunate.
I agree. Life is hard right now.
Very, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, are there any restrictions to the meeting at Niagara Pain Group, such as age or caregivers or family members only? Anything of that nature?
No, so anyone's welcome. There's no restriction that way, especially not in terms of age or anything like that. Our restrictions are more about health and safety and about comfort. So we work very hard to make, especially the in-person component, as comfortable as possible and as safe as possible. So we have members who have vulnerable health conditions and may be more vulnerable to illnesses that are circulating. It started with COVID. We had a masking policy that started because of COVID, and we're still maintaining that masking policy during the meeting in the meeting room. So anyone who needs to eat something or drink something during the meeting is asked to step outside of the meeting room to remove their mask to do so and then return when they're finished. So in the meeting room, there is a masking policy. I bring extra masks in case someone has forgotten theirs, but that's to protect people. People who are like, they've got cancer or going through chemo, that kind of thing. I know in the description you read, it mentioned non-malignant pain, and that has certainly been the focus. And there's a rationale for that I'll get to in a moment. But, just the way life has gone, we've ended up with members who were chronic pain support group members before they got cancer and are going through cancer while part of the group. So even though this masking thing started with COVID, it's continued now with there's other illnesses going around and people who've got cancer and people who are just susceptible for other reasons to keep it safe. My own personal reason, my daughter has asthma, so I'm still masking out in the community as well, not just in the meeting room. The rationale for the non-malignant pain thing was because it's not that we have anything against someone who's experiencing pain because of cancer. The rationale was that patients who are experiencing pain because of a cancer diagnosis also have access to a level of medical support to deal with that pain that we as general chronic pain patients don't. So it's more likely that they're going to have access to opioids and other pain relieving medications that we now don't really have good access to. It's gotten worse over the years, especially with the opioid crisis. A lot of chronic pain patients lost access to the opioids that were allowing them to have a bit of, stability and normalcy and being able to do more, function better in their life, and they've lost that now through all of the measures to deal with the opioid crisis. So having someone in our group whose sole chronic pain experience is because of cancer it's a very different situation, and it's not the same kind of peer support. It's harder for the two differences to relate to each other because it's a very different experience. So that's why I think it's always been. It was like that before I got to the group that it mentioned non-malignant pain, and I believe that's always been the reason for it. And I've seen that in recent years in members who have come to our group. But other than that, there's no restrictions. We welcome everybody, spouses, everybody.
Great. That's amazing to hear. And without using any names, can you share a success story with me? What supports were put into place when someone asked for help?
You say no names, but I always like to use myself an example. I really do. And I often use my life as an example.
I would love to hear your story, so
Yeah,
please do.
I'm picking very carefully because it's a long story. So I'm gonna pick just a snippet. I can give you two examples actually from my own life. One quickly is when I was in my early 30s, I was so debilitated by my chronic pain. Did not have um, good management, good coping skills, or any of that. And I was pretty much bedridden at the time. I was in really bad shape. And I pretty much thought at that point that my life was just over, that I had been so determined to figure out what was going on with me and just fix it and get back to work. And it didn't go that way. And I was in bad shape. And then, I started going to groups and getting more help. And with learning management skills and um, coping skills, I managed to fight my way back. And I really credit a lot of the people at the chronic pain support group that I met over the years with giving me that encouragement and that support. And a lot of them telling me, look, I used to be really bad. And look where I am now. It can happen. Don't give up. And now I'm the one giving that message all these years later. I'm the one giving that message to other people. Like, look at me. I used to be bedridden. Don't give up. This can get better. The other thing was when I had my baby. I'm a single mom with a disability, and it was big and scary. It was something I wanted, but it very much, but it was also big and scary to take that on. And I had a really, really beautiful pregnancy, but a very difficult delivery. And it was chronic friends from the chronic pain support group who stepped up. They gave me a baby shower. They showed up after to visit to see if I needed anything. And these are people who live with chronic pain, who themselves are struggling to get through their life and get through their activities of daily living. But they showed up for me. And that's the power of the support group. It really is.
Thank you for sharing that. It's very inspirational, and I can definitely appreciate how someone with chronic pain can be in that state of feeling like their lives are over, they have nothing left, because pain is awful. It just takes so much out of you, not just the pain itself. If for me, when I get headaches, I'm done. I can't do anything until I get rid of that headache. And even just a mild headache, I cannot take those, period. So I can really appreciate where you're coming from when you tell your story, and where all of the members of your support group are coming from when they share theirs. It really it's just heartfelt, to show up for each other, to be there for each other when you yourself are trying to surmount obstacles that many don't really understand, and you yourself may not understand.
I believe the generosity is so great because we understand what it's like to be in that other person's shoes at that moment.
Of course.
So when you're doing well, you wanna help those who aren't, because when you're
Yeah,
not doing well, others helped you.
definitely. Yeah. Now, what is the one thing you see happening over and over again to individuals with disabilities that shouldn't be, and how do we stop it?
Oh goodness, how much time do we have?
We still have a
Ugh.
few minutes.
Oh, there's
Actually,
so
not that much
many.
time. Maybe 5 minutes.
Well, the biggest okay. I'll highlight a couple, that are sort of my biggest concerns. The first one was that, access to medication, that I mentioned, and we really took a hit during the opioid crisis. It's still going on, really. So briefly, what happened there was the guidelines for opioid prescribing changed in response to the opioid crisis. And as a result, depending on who you ask about this, the author of that guideline maintains that he never intended for people who were stable on their medication to get cut off. And yet, when doctors were reading the guidelines, that's what they thought they had to do. So a lot of people were cut off of their opioids after like decades of functioning well with their medication. And now they're sort of just now backtracking. It's been many years of suffering, and they're just now starting to backtrack and revise the guidelines. So that's one is access to chronic pain medication and other types of therapies that help to manage chronic pain. It's awful. There's a lot of work to be done there. The other thing is financial resources. A lot of us, as I mentioned before, end up with few financial resources and living far below the poverty line. And especially now with everything happening in the world with inflation, we're really struggling. And we can debate whether or not the new disability benefit is going to help many people, but that's a conversation for another time. The other one is transportation. Access to public transit is difficult. It's not a good service. We have a specialized, they call it specialized transit here. There's different names everywhere. It used to be called paratransit, but it's transit, public transit for people with disabilities. And when it's good, when you have access to it, and when it works well, it's great. It does not currently work that well, and people with disabilities.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it. I know all too well.
I'm sure you're aware, yeah. Those of us who have had to suffer through it are very aware of the issues. So there are not a lot of people in our group that rely on public transit like I do, but it's enough that I've had people say to me, "I can't come to the meeting because I can't get there." This was before we had the Zoom link. It's hard to hear that, and it's hard to know that, our system is not robust enough to be able to handle that, and it's not fair that people with chronic pain and people with disabilities
Yeah, I agree with you on all 3, but especially that last one.
can't get to where they need to get help.
Yeah, it sure is.
But those are my top 3. It's a hard one. Yeah.
If someone wanted to become a member of the Niagara Pain Group, how do they join?
Oh, all they have to do is ask. Just send me an email. Our email is Niagara Pain Group, I believe, at gmail.com. Uh, yeah, it's just by request. That's it. There's no special skill testing question or anything. You just ask and you're in. I add you to an email list, and that way you get the Zoom link and any information about what's going on, as well as I call it an agenda, but I say that sort of half jokingly. I write what looks like an agenda, like you would see at a business or something, but it's much more it's much more low key and laid back than that. It's not meant to be stiff and formal. It's just a rough guideline for us to follow to kind of keep us on track and make sure that we're actually discussing topics and learning things in our meetings. But I always leave time if someone needs time to discuss something in that moment. If someone's really struggling, I always make time for them.
Perfect. Thank you. And if listeners are looking for more information, how can they reach out to you? How does someone ask for help?
The best way is the email. Um, it's always the best way. So our email is Niagara Pain Group at gmail.com. If you send that email, that's the quickest and easiest way to get me. Give me a couple of days. If I don't get back to you right away, just bear with me. Like I said, our meetings are once a month, and there's quite often times when I can't respond to an email for like a week or so because I've just got so much going on. But I always do get back to people. I always respond to the emails. Um, once you're in the group, there is a phone number. Once you've met me, kind of thing. There is an email. It's my private email, so I don't advertise it. The other way is we do have that website you mentioned. I don't often quote it though because it's a free site, which means we don't have a direct link. So it's niagarapaingroup.wixsite.com. It's on a Wix website, one of those free ones, but there is a contact us um, method on that website. Email's the best.
Perfect. Amazing. Well, Amy, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed all that you had to share, and especially your own personal stories. It was just wonderful for that inspiration. So, thank you so much. And this concludes another Community Partners interview. Let's care, let's share, because we've all been there.